Facundo Pellistri, is he Uruguay's answer to Lionel Messi? Ed Woodward has packed up, or has he? What can go wrong with Richard Arnold? And what would winning the FA Cup mean to you? This is the Strettycast. I am your host, Dale O'Donnell, and I am joined this week by Shaun Connolly. It's been a difficult week for Manchester United for a number of reasons, but on the PR spectrum, with Mason Greenwood's arrest, we can't comment on that because it's an ongoing investigation. Greenwood was arrested on Sunday and released on bail midweek, and the case is ongoing. So, Shaun, with that in mind, and the obvious thing that we would then move on to from a football point of view is Rangnick's attacking options between now and the end of the season. And you look at Manchester United's lack of activity in the January transfer market. They decided not to add players to the squad, knowing that a new manager will come in the summer, and the risk then of having players that he might not fancy, that doesn't end up in good PR either. It ends up in an unhappy dressing room, which we seem to have right now. But do you see Rangnick dipping into that pool that United have in the academy and giving more young players the chance now that Greenwood won't be playing for Manchester United for the foreseeable future? He's been suspended.
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, obviously, as a club with such proud traditions of developing and cultivating our academies and our youth players, and bringing them so proudly through our first team, over 1,100 games of consecutive appearances of youth team players. I mean, I think it's inevitable. It's almost inevitable as any manager at the club. But I mean, particularly today, after Rangnick was quoted when asked about Lionel Messi, he's now going to be a regular first team member. He's going to be training with the first team. He's going to be representing the first team, and he's going to have plenty of opportunities to prove that he is capable of lining out in that team. I mean, Hannibal is an exceptionally talented young player, a great prospect, and yet another cog that can be added to this fantastic youth arsenal. It's been a tough week, as you said, but beside every tough week, there's always some silver lining, and there's always positives that we can take, particularly from Carrington today, wasn't there?
Absolutely, Shaun. So Harry Gregg sadly passed away, and the great Harry Gregg was enriched in our history for being the hero of Munich. His great-grandchild was sent over to Manchester this weekend for his first game. And although that was fantastic as it was, he got a warm welcome this morning at Carrington. So he got to meet all the goalkeepers, David De Gea, Lee Grant, Dean Henderson, and Tom Heaton, a signed jersey from them. And it was just nice to see that in the week that it was for Manchester United, that there was something nice to take from it, because
it's beautiful.
It's not something, like I said, that we can comment on the Greenwood case, but waking up on Sunday morning and seeing that material, something is seriously wrong if that doesn't turn your stomach. And like I said, we can't comment any further on it. We're a football podcast. We're not I'm not going to put it down to drama either, but I also don't feel comfortable speaking on a podcast about domestic violence when we haven't got a woman part of the panel as well as that, so we have to keep that in mind. So Shaun, Facundo Pellistri, I mentioned, is he Uruguay's answer to Lionel Messi? That's what you were saying on Twitter the other night. He had a fantastic display for Uruguay in the World Cup qualifier the other night. Is this something that we can be all excited about?
Oh, definitely. As you know, I'm a massive advocate for the youth at Manchester United. Big fan of it. Follow it many years. It was wonderful to see Pellistri the other night. I mean, during that game, he actually completed more dribbles. He won more duels, created more chances, and he made more tackles than any other player in the field against Venezuela. He had that mazy run for that goal, which to me, I had to take to Twitter for it straight away, because it just looked like a young Messi. Now, I know he's a couple of inches taller than Messi, but and I'm not going to be trying to get carried away with myself too much, but the run was reminiscent to the great Argentine. It was absolutely spectacular. People will probably pull back on the opposition, but this is international caliber. This is a guy making his senior debut, with his first start in terms of his debut, and he was electric. It was a fantastic performance from him. I think what was even more impressive with it is when you consider, if you go back to, we'll say, the start of December, His appearances with Deportivos have been very, very limited. He started one game since December, and with the exception of a 45-minute stint in the Cup, I believe he's had less than 45 minutes senior game time. So he's been really, really limited. They had a new manager that actually came in December. His opportunities have been extremely limited, and he got an opportunity at international level, and he took it with some serious plunks with it. I was really happy for him. And I mean, look, I say time and time again, this is a hobby, Dale. It's a hobby that we're privileged enough to be able to enjoy. And if you can't enjoy a performance that he gave in that first half, what are you even doing?
Yeah, he did very well to win the penalty, which Luis Suarez put away. But there was another clip that I came across on social media of his link-up play with Edison Cavani, and we thrown this up on the blog after we found it. It's really encouraging to see. And when I mentioned at the start of this podcast that our attacking options now look thin, a lot more thin than they did a month ago, you'd wonder if with the lack of game time he's getting in Spain, could he then return on loan? But we'll get to that later on the podcast, because I believe that's one of the questions that we have lined up from the listeners on Facebook and Twitter. Sure. Another big headline in the world of Manchester United this week was the departure of Ed Woodward. He had finally packed up. His reign, which was a sack of shit, is over. Shaun, it was a disaster from start to finish, and we get onto that finish because before we started recording, you mentioned a bit about his transfer policy and the way it left Manchester United. But at the start, it started really, really rocky because he came in as a total rookie in the football world and didn't have his contacts and made some really, really bad mistakes. And there's some that made their way to the media. There's some that will be forever known as rumors, but there's some really, really embarrassing stuff, Shaun. Like mentioning Marouane Fellaini, a player that he signed 2 weeks late, missing out on his release clause. He could have got him for what? Was it 8 or 15 million cheaper?
I mean, when it comes to this, man, you're getting into a position, even thinking about it now, where do you start? Where do you start? You're talking about Fellaini. I mean, this is his first real opportunity to stamp his authority around his position that he has created for himself and his title that he's created for himself. And like you said, he's an opportunity to sign him for a smaller fee, misses out and pays nearly double his release clause. I mean, as he progressed, it was just so obvious with the man that he wanted to have his hand in every single pie. It didn't matter if it was a situation where he was grossly out of his depth in some particular field. He still felt it necessary because of his ego to be able to go and pursue this particular situation because he can. And you saw transfer after transfer with grossly overpaying for footballers that had no real there was no connection. It was just, there's a big name available. He might necessarily fit the mold of what it is we're trying to achieve, but we can overspend on him and say that we're doing a great job. And this just happened year after year after year. And just such a shambles of a transfer policy and truly just an identity that made us a laughing stock.
Time and time again, because it showed Manchester United up each summer for being incompetent. And I remember Manchester United being in the middle of transfer windows and needing to get business done. Yet Ed Woodward was said to be at the other side of the world watching rugby, his favorite sport, by the way. And it was tipped to me some time ago that when he leave Manchester United, that his next venture would be a vineyard somewhere, a new family business. So I wish him the best of luck with that. But in terms of his job at Manchester United, it was poor. He never quite understood the fans, never quite understood what we wanted of our football club. By the way, he was the person that sold the idea to the Glazers that they could take Manchester United over in such a way and inflict so much debt on the club. He sold them that idea, and he was their puppet for years. People might say that
Yeah.
he took a lot of flack for that, but he was their puppet, and he was a very, very well paid puppet to stand in that position. And
He was.
so
And
we
it
can
was like I said
forget
to you, it was like I
that.
said to you at the very start that, I mean, people will try and look at his tenure as a whole and say, you know what, there was a lot of bad, but there might be a couple of commercial avenues where we can look at it, or that maybe he was okay. But the way I see it, as you said, with him helping the Glazers to acquire the club in the way that he did, I just liken it to somebody coming, burning your card out, and then helping you pushing it into a scrapyard. It's to me, he came, he took, he continued to take with incompetence and with an ego that brought him in this position where any knowledgeable individual would have simply installed individuals in positions that understood the game, understood what they should have been doing, and ultimately allowed an ego to take play, whereby we saw the cataclysmic result of what it was. And as you said, you used the word incompetence. I think incompetence is probably the best word to sum it up.
Absolutely. And there's a new man in position, and he's taken up the title of chief executive. So he's doing that much right. Shaun, he has a bit of a to-do list, which we're going to go through. So starting off, he's got a contract policy to oversee. And in speaking about Ed Woodward, we would be very complimentary of how Manchester United contract or this control contracts in recent years, especially up until now.
No. Well, I mean, I suppose it develops upon something that we've spoken about many, many times in this podcast, in how a player's contract was viewed as a commercial asset to the club. It's like when Phil Jones gets a massive contract, Dean Henderson gets a massive contract. It increases the commercial market value of the football club, and that's all that that Woodward was looking at, because ultimately you grace these players with these inflated contracts, and you're looking at a situation where you then struggle immensely to be able to shift these players onward because of the wage that they're receiving. And it gets into a situation where you see time and time again, and it's something that's occurring again this summer, that even though he's going to be gone, we're still going to have the fallout that there's only so many players leaving for free. Like, we've got into a position whereby we are paying huge sums of money for footballers, paying massive contracts, and then not being able to reclaim any sort of proper worth out of them when they're leaving the football club, because ultimately they're earning too much money.
As we've seen with Phil Jones, and he didn't get his move in January, he wasn't happy with the football that was offered at Marseille. And he was well entitled to that, by the way, because we received a lot of comments on the blog about Phil Jones on deadline day and kind of being very critical of him for not moving to France. But the way I see it is, he's not a young player exactly that is trying to go and prove himself that way. He's an experienced pro that has to get set up now and with his family and move to France for 6 months and might not get the football that he wants. So I understood his decision there massively. But going back to Richard Arnold and the contract policy, it's something he has to look at, because Manchester United can't continue like this. We can't continue to have players running down their contracts, because this situation that we used to laugh about years ago with Arsenal, they were losing their best players, and they still are to this day. You look at Aubameyang, they offered him a massive contract not long ago, and on deadline day there was nothing but saga in the way in which he left the club, and it just looks like a complete circus, and we don't want to be part of that. And we're going to be part of it again in the summer. Paul Pogba could leave on a free, and that leaves Manchester United with a massive egg on their face. And going back to Woodward, Shaun, and he brought in Pogba for a record deal. We've never seen his maximum potential at Manchester United. We've never seen him at his best, and we can all agree on that. And he's a player with a market value of 70 million, north of that, could leave for free in the summer. That's shocking business.
It's not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. And ultimately, it looks like it's going to happen twice, doesn't it? And I mean, it's down to, it's these commercial decisions that outweighed actual footballing decisions. But ultimately, look, we're in a position where we're now at a potential turning roads, at crossroads. We're stung, we're hurt by what has happened in the past. And it leaves this scenario where you have a lack of confidence in moving forward in any sort of possible progression, because ultimately this is an individual who is a buddy of sorts, obviously, of Woodward. But I think in many situations, particularly even when Ranieri took over, you have to be knowledgeable that it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. And I think this summer could very well be that situation of it looking like it's going to continue bad before it actually starts getting good, because ultimately the position that we're in at the moment, it has led towards this unsustainable sort of scenario that we're now probably going to see again, with several players that have this huge market value that we could be getting back into the club. And ultimately we're in a position where we're helpless to be able to stop it. But I think it's a necessary means to an end based on the negativity and the situation that we've been in for the last decade.
Oh, I totally agree. And then another list, or another task on his to-do list, is to find a new manager, which I suspect in the coming days and weeks, Manchester will be stepping up their approach. We've had reports during the week that Mauricio Pochettino's job in Paris is very much on the cusp of ending, especially in the summer when they're looking likely to appoint Zinedine Zidane, who was on Manchester United's target list a few months ago.
They had a bit of a shock in the cup there, didn't they?
They did, and that's what's really brought these rumors, and it kind of like, it's unsettling to me as someone who would argue that Pochettino is good fit for Manchester United. There's a lot of people online suggesting that he's not. I'd argue he is, and I just think that it's unsettling that there's these talks already, because I do think it's crucial that he wins the title in France this season before he comes to Old Trafford, just to diminish that little argument people have about him. Because if he was to come to Manchester United after getting sacked by PSG before the season ends, then he won't have that title under his belt. And then I think I might weigh then elsewhere about who should get the United job. But right now, I would be still in Pochettino camp.
Yeah. Well, there's two names constantly surfacing, isn't there? And I was surprised with the cup exit, as I'm sure you were. A lot of people were, and I agree totally. We're in a situation now where there has to be some sort of success behind whoever is coming ultimately, because you're going to get into a situation where the naysayers, as we've discussed before, are just going to use this as a crux towards, okay, well, if you're appointing someone who's a perennial loser, what do you expect? It's not progressive, forward thinking. And I think there's a bigger picture at play ultimately. I know you're a fan of Pochettino, and I know plenty of people argue against Pochettino. I think Pochettino is a fantastic manager. I think Pochettino is Premier League proven, has done a fantastic job with two clubs with very limited resources. And I certainly don't understand personally why people would be so against him coming on board, because I think, does he not really amalgamate a lot of what we're looking for? He's got the tactical approach. He's got the ability to clearly shape a dressing room, as he's done on several occasions. When you're looking at Paris Saint-Germain is an enigma, because quite simply, it is a dressing room full of players that are spearheaded with the likes of Mauro Icardi. Now that says enough. You know, it's very, very big personalities inside that dressing room. Big personalities.
I think also, Shaun, with something that I've noticed on social media is, although I'll always have opinions on Manchester United, Stretty News and the Strettycast, and that we get together once a week and we talk about United, I also feel that I know a line with my opinions, and I felt in the past few days with these stories heating up about who could get the Manchester United job and specific people linked, I felt that a lot of people want to be proven right the whole time. This could be something about social media. And some of the stuff, what I'm talking about, is not just your everyday opinion. Some of the stuff is pretty damning, like why Pochettino is not the right person for Manchester United, and I would be so disappointed if we appoint him. As you pointed out, there might be more than one manager out there that has the credentials for this job. I would hope Manchester United can spot a few people that tick a few boxes when they're making a decision. And if it's 3, if it's 2, I wouldn't look at Eric Ten Hag and Pochettino, who, as you said, are the 2 front runners. I wouldn't be disappointed with either of them. I'm being brutally honest. It would come down to possibly what you just mentioned. That can they come in on the back of a bit of success? Eric Ten Hag has done it consistently at Ajax, and he's likely to do it again this season. That would be a big boost for him if Pochettino was to be fired before PSG win the title in France, I think. That would be a big boost to him because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of naysayers, but I think there's also an unhealthy culture with social media nowadays with people trying to gain followers and show that they're right the whole time by downing things before they even start. It's fucking ridiculous for people to be writing off Pochettino the way they are. It's crazy. The same way I'd say about Ten Hag. It's like the same way that we were more supportive of Solskjaer. I know a lot of people now are going to be different opinions, but there was an unhealthy culture in the early days of Solskjaer of people wanting to be right about him not being the right person for Manchester United.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the most fashionable things in social media is notoriety. And it's something that I've battled against for many, many years on social media, and I will continue to, because ultimately, like you said about Solskjaer, like both of us were in the same boat. It was very much, look, you have to look at the greater picture with these things. And look, I was a massive advocate for what Solskjaer was doing because I saw he was trying to cultivate an ethos, and it wasn't just the football pitch, because people need to realize Manchester United is more than just putting 11 players on the field. And there's pros and cons to what it is, but it's something that Ferguson cultivated all those years ago, where you're looking after everything down to the tea lady. And what you have online is accounts, because I won't even call them people, because they don't even have pictures. They're accounts. They're hiding behind AVIs.
Burner accounts.
Yeah, exactly. And they just look. It's fashionable, as I said, to be this person who's held in this stature of notoriety to be able to claim a following, and it's totally unnecessary. I mean, it's the same situation,
Sean,
right?
An Arsenal fan commented under one of my tweets there the other week, and and said ratio.
I know.
I had to Urban Dictionary it.
I know, man. And you see, the thing is, like with Ten Hag, yeah, like Ten Hag is the definition of like a 21st century cosmopolitan manager. You know, like he's got the dress sense, he's got the charisma. He has a team over in Holland that got completely torn asunder as it would be expected after they did very well when they progressed in Europe that year. And he's rebuilt another fashionable team that plays attractive football. Ultimately, if that man took the hot seat at United and was underwhelming in the first 2 to 3 years, the same individuals that are absolutely shaming the possibility of Pochettino coming to this football club will start damning the achievements that this man has had in Holland as a Farmers League.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing sure about it. It's as simple as that.
That's precisely what we're getting to. I think he just nailed it. Another one of Arnold's tasks on his to-do list is a commercial deal, because the Aeon deal won't be extending. We also have questions, but just before we get onto the questions, Sean, I want to just go on to a topic with Jesse Lingard, who headed the game against Middlesbrough. Has told Ragnick that he needs some time off, needs some cooling period to think about what happened on deadline day, because he was held against his rights to stay at Manchester United on deadline day under contract that, of course, he signed, by the way. And let's not forget, in the summer, had decided that he wanted to stay at the club. But now, as soon as a bit of Saudi money comes to surface, he wants to run. I think, Sean, that his attitude here is fucking appalling. I think that it lacks professionalism. I think that the attitude in which his brother shown throughout the transfer window, when clearly pushing some of the West Ham graphics and talking about him being a prisoner and stuff like that, I thought it was really, really bad form. And I'll explain kind of further why it pisses me off in a second. But what did you make of it?
Well, I mean, you've got a guy that is incredibly vocal about a lack of playing time and a desire to be given more of an opportunity, throwing his hat out at what would appear to have been as clear an opportunity to show he's credible for the first team against Middlesbrough. I mean, it makes no sense. I had to double take when I saw it today, because it's you're waiting and you're complaining, and you have these images surfacing from your camp constantly about, these are the good times. This is when I was playing football at West Ham when I was happy. I want to play football. I want to be happy. I want my first team opportunity. Here's Middlesbrough. Here's a cup game. You're absolutely getting an opportunity in this game. And no, actually, I don't want to. It's I honestly would like to put some sort of logical reason behind what he has done, and I can't for the life of me string anything together for it. I really can't. I think it is. I'm dumbfounded with it.
Just getting to what Ragnick said on the situation, he said, and I quote, Jesse has asked to be off until Monday to clear his mind. He didn't leave because we had a problem with Mason Greenwood, and also because the club not finding an agreement with another club. So most of the squad, the players that weren't on international duty in South America and at the African Cup of Nations had a break for almost 2 weeks. And United agreed to let those players go to Dubai. A lot of those players, Ronaldo went with his partner to celebrate her birthday and took some time off. Jesse Lingard and Marcus Rashford went to Dubai as well, and that went through a training camp, and we're seeing some grime artists. One of them was called Wiley. But yeah, so he had his time off, and he's clearly, as you said, thrown his ties out at the pram, which I find really, really unacceptable for someone that I think has his image at the club, right? And this is why it annoys me, because he's obviously being led into the dark by bad representatives. His brother, who is his agent, I think has come across as a bit of a joke, which doesn't surprise me at all. And you look at this guy that's come from the academy, someone who I've always defended and supported and rated as a squad player, could leave on a good note. His negotiation stance right now is really, really strong. He can leave in the summer and are free. Manchester United have went through a traumatic week in the media. They've been battered all around the place because one of their players was arrested for domestic abuse and sexual assault. You're looking at the team right now, and you want them to play football, and the attacking options being so thin. You have a chance to stake a claim and to leave the club on a strong note between now and the end of the season. Why wouldn't you do it? What do you mean to clear your mind? That's nonsense. And it's this.
It's complete nonsense.
It's not a good time for Manchester United for this. He needs till Monday to clear his mind. Why didn't he do that when he was in Dubai? It was never set in stone that he was going anyway. So do you think, Shaun, that Lingard is totally ruining his reputation with Manchester United here?
I think this is yet another nail in that proverbial coffin with this. I mean, I think the last few weeks it's just been building and building and building, and people who would have been like yourself in tremendous support of him for such a long period of time, it's making it nearly impossible to support him. Now, just to be very clear on this, because I've spoken like many times about this. I am an advocate for supporting every single human being on social media, inclusive of Jesse Lingard, because obviously he had a fairly traumatic period previously where he received an awful lot of online
abuse.
And there's never any reason for that. But this isn't abusing. This is trying to point out that this is an individual who has just been yearning for an opportunity to play first team football, and you have an opportunity to do so with the team that you supposedly love, and then you decide.
I think he's been led astray, Shaun.
I beg your pardon?
I think he's been led astray. I think he's been poorly represented, and I think that they've made bad decisions on his behalf.
He's not the first footballer, especially the first footballer at United, you could say that about, though. No. But ultimately, as well, with the social media campaign that his brother is running, as ludicrous as it is, it treads back on the previous topic we were talking about how people have notoriety on social media and how this actually builds an audience. There's a contingent online that are in support of what his brother is doing and ultimately believe that it's correct and that Jesse is somehow held as a prisoner. And it just... It bemuses me. It truly does. I mean, as I said, I'm normally not short for words on things, but when I saw this today, I don't know what to say about it. I think it's absolutely damning of his remaining time at the club. And as you asked, has he damaged his reputation? I think he absolutely has damaged his reputation. I think even the most staunchest of supporter will look at him now and just say, "Do you know what? I'd sooner you just sat in the reserves until you were gone, and then be done with you."
I think I've been quite measured. I know I texted you earlier on saying you might have to try and stop me from saying something I'd regret on the podcast when we touched on it later on, but I think I was quite measured. We also
I
have
think you did well.
a round of questions to get through. And again,
Sure.
thank you so much for sending these questions to us every week. And again, a lot of the same people sending questions, a lot of new people, lots of great seeing some new names. So Shaun, the first one from Fabiola, a regular contributor at Stretty News, some great reports on the U teams for the blog. She asks, should we have recalled Pellistri?
Yeah, well, a special note out for Fabiola. I mean, the content that she provides is second to none. If you want any sort of regular, valid, proper research information about the youth at this football club, then she is your go-to. But to touch upon the question, should we recall him? Unless something dramatically changes with his loan at this moment in time, I think something should have been done. Yes. I mean, we rearranged loan structures for several players during the January window. I was surprised we didn't with Pellistri, if I'm being honest, because as I touched upon previously, since early December, he's had one start. And in that particular start, they actually had a sending off. So he only saw 45 minutes of game time. And during the remainder of that time period, we're talking over a 2-month period, he's had about a sum total of 40 to 45 minutes of gameplay. The vast majority of that coming off the bench for 5-minute cameos or 10-minute cameos. So unless something dramatically changes, yes, I mean, ultimately we're sending him out for his development, aren't we? So he's not developing, sitting on the bench. I mean, it's really, I suppose, testament to his loan time as to where he is, that the largest talking point from him at this moment in time is how he recreated Messi on international duty. I mean, that says enough, really and truly. So I would hope that he can build himself into the new manager's plans and start featuring more. And maybe that international cameo will give them more opportunities to talk about him and give him more opportunities, because you'd expect that that's going to boost his confidence. So hopefully that will be replicated into his game time. Going to move on to a question from Damien Young. So Damien asks, we're now supposedly in the final few months of Ralph's tenure as interim manager before he moves into his consultancy role. Dale, do you think this process is going to run as we are led to believe, and that the next manager has already been contacted and in place to take over already?
I just laugh at that because we're near the end of Ralph's tenure, and it's only at the beginning, really, it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, he's right. The thing about this is, I don't think Ragnick as a coach has pulled up any trees. I don't think he's shocked us with performances by get the team hitting the grass running. We haven't seen that. So there's not cause for people to see him as a full-time manager. I know there's been reports that Paul Pogba wants that to happen, which I find bizarre since he hasn't played under him yet, and we're likely to see that against Middlesbrough in the FA Cup tomorrow night. But I do expect them to go upstairs at the end of the season. I think that the club will be under pressure almost to appoint a new man in the summer, be it Pochettino, be it Ten Hag, or be it Luis Enrique. There's a few other names that are still in the mix, not just two. So I do expect them to go upstairs. But who that is, it remains to be seen. That's the decision for Richard Arnold. And I don't think Richard Arnold will disrupt that kind of plan that's already in place. I think he'll leave that in place for Ragnar to go upstairs, because it would be a benefit to him, since he is a chief executive who doesn't want to appear to have too much dealings with football matters. It's been very much briefed that he is a man that wants to leave that to the likes of John Murto and Darren Fletcher. And with Ragnick moving upstairs in a consultancy role, he's got a really, really good, strong figure in that. And he needs to hit the ground running. He's going to need that support. And I think that just makes total sense for Manchester United going forward. Thanks for your question. Shaun, another one for you from Jerry Kelleher. And there's lots of talk this week about the new manager situation at the end of the season. Who are your preferences and why? He's mainly focusing this on three. He's on Pochettino, on Ten Hag, and he's included Ralphie's Reds next season, Shaun.
Ralphie's Reds. Well, look, just touching on what you said there a minute ago. I think one thing needs to be taken into consideration that while performances have been largely underwhelming, the man does have a 60% win rate. You know,
Yeah.
he's only lost one game in 10 and had opportunities, and had opportunities in that game not to lose. I'm not saying that that's reason for him to keep the job. Don't get me wrong, or anything. But ultimately, it's been painted largely by huge proportions, not by you now, but by huge proportions that it's been a disaster, and it's been anything but. It really has, because I mean, ultimately, statistically, at the end of the season, there's 38 games. People will remember how you finish after 38 games, and after 10 games, he's got a 60% win rate. So I think he's doing all right.
I call it stable. I'd call it stable.
Yeah, it's stable. And look, ultimately, at the end of the season, like, you do want Arnold to look after commercial matters and look after business matters. And you do want to hope, as a Manchester United fan, that he's going to stick to what he has said, in that he wants to leave footballing matters to footballing people. And ultimately, if we can have Ralph alongside Murtaugh and Fletcher going upstairs, then ultimately that's three footballing bodies that we can have taking care of decisions there that need to be taken care of,
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're then looking at two between Posh and Ten Hag, as we were talking about previously, if I had to select one of them right now, I would probably go with Ten Hag, quite simply because he's had a team, he's built a team, fantastic team, playing brilliant football, had that team decimated, rebuilt another team, and now they're playing fantastic football again. I suppose, look, you want to be entertained as a football fan. I think he plays entertaining football. Ultimately, there's a slight bit of a doubt in me because he's never done it in the Premier League. And I think Pochettino has done it in the Premier League. I mean, what he did with Southampton was fantastic. Had a great little fairy tale sort of run with Spurs with very, very little financial support as well, even though he did have a good team. Like, he was shooting above his weight against City and all in the Champions League that time. So, I don't know. I really don't know, to be honest with you. I start saying I'll go with one of them, and I start talking myself out of it, thinking about the other one. Look, if it's going to be one of the two, and if I have to pick, I think I would go with Ten Hag at this moment in time, but that could change tomorrow. I would, I'll lay my hat at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you one from another country, Mr. James Gorse, man I know all too well. He was featured on the podcast previously. So what kind of striker should we be going for in the summer?
This is a question Manchester United will be asking themselves right about now, because they probably need a few. Considering that we've let Anthony Martial go on loan, his future is up in the air. He wanted to leave, and if he goes to Seville and enjoys himself, he's probably not going to want to come back. So there's another player that could be leaving. Cavani's future is uncertain. He is very unlikely to sign a new contract extension at the end of the season. This will be his last year. So you've also got Ronaldo, who'll be 37, and he's going to be our main goal scoring outlet. They're going to have to dip into the market, Sean. They're going to have to not sign only one goal scorer, but two. And you've seen the names of like Haaland being mentioned. I just can't see that one. I just can't see him come to the Premier League right about now. I think he'll go to Real Madrid.
Do you want him? Do you want him? I have to ask that now. Like, I mean, I know Haaland, the player, amazing goals left, right, and center. Haaland, the baggage off the field. Do you want that?
Yeah, because I don't think he's that bad off the field. I think, and I referred to this on the podcast before, that we've had players previously under Mino Raiola, and Zlatan never caused us problems and was actually an asset to Manchester United. The difference is when those personalities allowed that agent to overstep the mark, which Paul Pogba has always been very happy to do with Mino Raiola. I think if Erling Haaland was to come, I think his career is set out, okay? I don't think that his next club is going to be his long-term club. I think he's going to bunny hop. And if Manchester United were lucky to sign him in the summer, I would accept that. They should have accepted that before he went to Dortmund, that there would be a clause in his contract. Just get him in, because I'll tell you why I want him. I think whoever gets him in will win league titles. I know what was said about Manchester United before they signed Ronaldo. This is a player that's in his prime. and he's definitely a player that's worth having. But I just can't see it. I think he's definitely. The question is, what kind of striker do Manchester United need? That's what they need. They need a top goal scorer. And there's not many of them out there. We've struggled to find them in recent years. Lukaku wasn't the one they were looking for. Zlatan was past his best. Falcao never only scored 4 goals. They haven't got that in recent years, and that may be an answer as to why we're still lacking in that title race. So it's a good question. It's something that people at United have to figure out.
Charlie McNeil.
I'd love to see it. Of course we would. Of course we'd love to see it, because with the terrible news that we've had this week, and it's awful. Like I keep referring back to it. It's in my mind the whole time. We're reading about it every day. We need something else in the academy now. We need someone else to sing about. We need a good kid. We need a good kid in the academy to come through. Charlie McNeil, Joe Hogle, someone. Not putting too much pressure on, but we love seeing that. The question I have for you is basically this very topic from Joe Murphy. He says, do you expect more youth debuts before the end of the season? Like Shaun, this is an example of United fans. They want to see youth players come through. We're talking about Erling Haaland and costing so much money, but we need a fix of a youth academy coming through.
God, we do, yeah. And I absolutely do think we'll see more youth coming through. Touching upon what we said previously, you got Hannibal Mejri has just been instilled as a first team player. I mean, that's adding to Anthony Elanga, who has now become a first team regular in recent weeks. I mean, I think Ranić is I think he's a little nerdy football fan at heart, just like me, just like you. He's a little football nerd who looks at Manchester United and says, this is a club that have an ethos of promoting youth and playing youth team players and this proud academy, and I want to keep this going. I mean, but ultimately, just think about it logically. I mean, if you're going to invest all of this money, I know that there's a certain amount of it is just this whole hoorah that we want to be seen that we're doing it, but United back it up, and United have always backed it up, and we've got some real quality players coming through the youth. I mean, if they were all available now, I think you have a huge a who's who list of individuals that we can choose from. And I do genuinely believe that come the summer, there's going to be an awful lot of these guys as well that are going to have their chance, like we spoke about previously, to really instill themselves as first team players. I think there's definitely scope for more first team debuts for players. I really do. And I welcome it wholeheartedly, as you know I do. I mean, just look at Elanga. Look at Elanga's song. When you hear the Stretford ends screaming that song out, I mean, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I mean, Mejri, I can only imagine the songs they're going to make up about him. It's going to be fantastic. And if he can get to within an inch of the potential that he has, we have another fantastic player on our hands there. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I do believe there's going to be some more introductions. And going into next year, the preseason tour is going to be fantastic, because you're going to have the likes of Jimmy Garner, Ethan Laird, these boys that are coming back into it. And I'm excited for it. I really am. And obviously judging as well on what Fabiola asked. I know Fabiola's excited about it too. Last one for you, and it's from Mr. Keane Franey. With the departures of a few players in the squad in the forward areas, do you think Hannibal Mejri could make that step up to cover?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen it today. As you mentioned, he's been added to the squad now. Ragnick has spoke about him and seen him play for Tunisia on international duty and get senior international football under his belt, which cannot be underestimated, Shaun, because that's massive experience for young Fland. You come back to United now with probably a bit of a chip on his shoulder and a bit of confidence, and that's no harm. That's no harm. I hope he comes in and does himself some justice, because I think he might get a chance against Borough tomorrow night. That wouldn't surprise me. I think that, if United are coasting the game, he might look to his bench and give some young players some minutes under their belt. Would not be against that.
Absolutely.
Would not be against that. And look, this is exactly what I'm talking about too. Manchester United in the past have had depleted squads, and the way they've bounced back from that is in trusting young players, and that's something that we're going to see between now and the end of the season. And as you touched on, Shaun, in the manager like Ragnick, who has an interest in promoting young players, we should see that. And whatever happens between now and the end of the season, it may be rocky, but I think that if we're giving young players an opportunity, it's something that we can sit back and, you know what, and just try and enjoy.
But Dale, you can't win anything with kids.
Exactly. Brilliant. So Shaun, thanks so much for joining me again this week. Of course, before we get to the social media part, you can subscribe to the Stretty newsletter at stretty.substack.com. It's completely ad-free. There's two options. You can get the paid subscription where you get all the juicy details around Manchester United, and there's also a free option which you get a lot of the newsletters too. Shaun, how can people follow you on Twitter?
At Shaun Connolly 85.
Excellent. And you can find me at O'Donnell Dale. You can also follow the blog at Stretty News, where you get all the news around Manchester United daily. We'll be recording the podcast again next week. Thanks so much for listening, and especially to those listeners that are submitting questions every week. Really appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.